So this is for my new subscribers, and if you're new to the channel, this is a sew with me video where I take you along with me while I sew the pattern. So if you're just here to see the pattern review and the look of the day, how the way the pattern looks once made, you just have to fast forward to the end. Hi everyone, welcome back. This week I am attempting to make these two dresses here, A and C from New Look 6280. This pattern was recently released in their summer 2014 collection. I posted my must-haves on my blog and I decided to get this one because looking at the design lines, it looks like something that's going to stay in my stash for many years to come. So I already cut out the main pattern, and so let's begin. So this is the first piece I'll be using to make view C. It is pattern piece 8. Now the pattern wants you to cut 2 out of the fabric that you're working on and 2 out of what they're calling tricoat. Tricoat is just another word for any type of knit lining that you want to use. You know, usually I use Jet Set that I get from Joann's. I've talked about that repeatedly. But today I had more fabric than I needed, so I'm just going to use the fabric as the lining. Now as you can see, I already mark it. I thread mark my pieces when I'm using knits because they don't come out. And so let's begin. The first thing they want you to do is right sides facing together. They want you to go ahead and run a stitch up to this mark right here. The first stitch is the center stitch. Which looks like this, and you're going to do the same thing to the lining pieces. So now that you've already stitched up the center of the lining and the front piece, they want you to attach them together, right sides facing together, and it's going to be attached along this side here and then these two front parts right here. So right now I'm just pinning it together. And so you're going to be stitching it from within those 2 dots that's provided. And you're going to do the same thing where the center area is. You're going to put it right on that first marking. And you're going to stitch it all the way to this marking right here, which is where the center seam had started. Just make sure that you're not sewing into anything. And this is what it looks like once you're done stitching up the both sides. And then they want you to underline this area right here where the armhole is and the center area right here. Now to underline the armhole area, you want to push that seam here. This is the seam. You want to push that seam towards the lining fabric. Then you're going to slip it underneath there. And you're just going to run a very narrow stitch. Just like this, almost to the seam. Making sure that you constantly have that seam fabric pushed towards the lining. And this is how the way it will look. This is the lining area. This is that thin understitched line that you're seeing there. Now after you're done with the understitching, They want you to do a machine stitch around the whole bottom of the bodice. And for this, I'm just going to move the needle all the way to the widest stitch setting. Then I'm going to just run the stitch. So this is the finished machine-based area right here. And then also the next step is to add the gathers. Now, of course, you could do it on the machine, but I wanted to mark it with red thread, and I didn't want to change the thread on my sewing machine, so I just did, you know, some hand gathers. These pins is to mark the area where it needs to be gathered. I like to go back with the pattern and line it up to the edge and just make sure it's kind of more accurate. And now I'm going to interface the neckband. So this is where I'm at in making the pattern. I'm about to add the neckband, and this is the neckband right here. The two pieces, the lining and the front facing fabric, are both interfaced with knit interfacing. So first I'm going to start by seaming up the top of the neckband. Then when that's done, I'm going to clip the edges. The pattern wants you to run a machine stitch along the circumference of the neckline, just like you did with the top part. And then they want you to notch the pattern so you could insert the top of the bodice piece into those openings. So what I'm going to do, I am going to mark the places where the incision of the fabric is going to be, and then I'm going to run the stitch, leaving those openings open, and then I'll come back and insert them. When I'm doing all these notchings, it really helps to have the needle in the down position. It just makes it so much easier to maneuver, which you will see when I get to go a little faster. When I get to these little grooves, you stop, zigzag, raise, move. It kind of gives it like a more accurate place to stop. This is the center. And now you could go ahead and snip those markings after you made that stitch. Get over here. All right, then turn it over. And this is how the way it looks turned back on the right side. You got to pull out your little notches, and these are where you're going to push in the top of the bodice. So at this point, if you had used a regular lining, then this would be a solid, and this would be a solid. This would be the part that's facing on the inside, and the right side would be facing the outside. And what you're going to do is that you're going to lift up the lining piece and attach this part of the bodice, the top. You're going to attach it to the outer fabric. So this is the lining, and this is the outer fabric that you're attaching the top bodice to. So now you're going to make sure that these two line up to each other. So I finished with adding connecting the two pieces together, I should say. And now I'm going to turn over the facing or the lining, however which you want to say it. And I am going to do a slip stitch now. Of course, you could do a stitch and a ditch on the right side. However, this fabric is really thin. It's giving me the time of my life. And I think that if I slip stitch it, I would have more control and it would be more neater. So I'm going to go do that. And the next thing will be to add the waistband. So I just got done doing the slip stitching for the neckline. And now it's time to do the waistline. What you can do is you could attach the interfaced piece of the waistband with right sides together to the front, and you could do your machine stitch first, and then you could attach the lining, which is this part right here, after. But what I'm going to do is that I am going to pin all of this as one and then run that stitch, and it should fall over and look like this. So everything is going to be an all-in-one situation. So as you can see here, everything is pinned together, and it's time to stitch. I put all my pins in one direction because it makes it easy for me to pull them out as I go. Now this is the front side, and as you can see, everything has been enclosed in one stitch. Next, we will prepare the front bottom to be attached to the bodice. Then I marked and gathered the top part of the skirt as I did before on the bodice. Then attach the interfaced bodice to the skirt, the top of the skirt, right sides facing each other, and stitch. And this is that seam I just made by attaching the bottom to the top. So now the pattern wants you to, of course, conceal the whole midriff or waistline area with the lining of the bodice. And they want you to do a slip stitch. Now, I'm not going to do a slip stitch. I'm going to do a stitch in the ditch because your waistband gets a lot of stress from the stretching from moving. And I don't like the idea of slip stitches coming out when you move around. So now it's time to do the stitch in a ditch. And first, you want to position your needle dead center inside of that seam. So that is how you are going to position your needle to begin with. And this is a close-up of exactly where that needle is going each and every time. Dead center in there. You want to, because this is a knit, you want to pull that fabric and just stitch ever so slowly. Pull, stitch, pull, stitch slowly. And that is how you get it done. This is the right side of the fabric after the stitch in the ditch is complete, and this is the inside of the dress. Now, as you can see, I used black thread in the bobbin so you can see that that stitch that's created. This is the basting stitches that I used to baste everything down before I started, and that's it. Now it's time to finish up the back. This is the back of the dress. I've already added the two straps or sashes that's going to be pulling and knotting at the back. These are the markings here that the tie bands from the neckline is going to go in. Then you're going to attach the front and back with right sides facing each other. This area here is where the tie band is. So as you can see right here, make sure that's all the way in. Another thing is that you want to make sure your tie band lines up with your waistline. And this little piece here extends off of the front. This is going to become your casing. So now I'm at the point where I'm about to finish off the elastic casing, which is the top part of the back of the dress. So this is the first time I've been on the serger since I started the dress. This is to serge the sides, and I also serged the top part of the dress that is going to be folded down, as you see here, to make the casing. I decided to hand stitch this instead of doing the stitch on the sewing machine because I want to attach the straps to this all in one when I do that machine stitch. So for the elastic, the pattern wants you to use a 1/2 inch elastic, and I've already threaded through here. I've shown this before for some of you beginners out there. This is the elastic threader. Absolutely love this thing. Cannot do without it. The elastic I'm using is a 1/2 inch braided elastic. I really like this one because it doesn't roll over. I'm going to try this on because I need this to fit flush on my back. When you go to buy a ready-to-wear dress that has elastic in the back, sometimes it sags, sometimes you see like your bra strap hanging out. That's because it's not fitted properly. So I'm gonna go try it on, fit it, see how it works out, and then I'm gonna come back and finish it off. So to finish off this elastic, I'm just gonna snip it right here. Then I'm gonna bend it in, all the way in, right there, and I am going to pin this. And what's going to happen, providing that this pin goes in, there you go. What's going to happen is that when I am doing the casing, I'm going to start the machine stitch and just go along this line and then turn it and go all the way down. I'm going to do it to both sides. Now for the straps, you're going to turn in your seam allowance. You see that's turning there? It's going to take a little while. You don't have to be precise, just get a little bit there. This is the marking of where it needs to go. You're going to pin it right to the edge. And then from here, you are going to run that stitch over it. This is how it ended up working out. Everything was done in one seam, as I said before. And now I'm going to show you the finished garment. This is the back. And I didn't make note of this before, but I also stitched, let me see if I can get this right here. It's stitched right here to add some support to the strap area, because without that little stitch, it's like pulling on the elastic casing. And this is the front. Here, a close-up of the actual neckband, keyhole, waistband, and here comes the look of the day.